There are shipping records cold and terse that end halfway through a syllable, as if the scribe's hand was snatched away by something in the dark. And for those worlds, even the angels of death do not come back. It is in the ledgers first, always. Dry ink on parchment the color of old bone, a heavily stamped box inscribed by administrators who will die comfortably in their sleep. The words are simple, determined, system deemed lost, assets forfeited, all further operations prohibited, inquisitorial redaction in effect. Somewhere on a distant world, a chime rings to mark the entry, another star blotted from the Imperial charts, another name consigned to the void. The significance rarely touches those who write it, but their insignias press the fate of an entire system beneath wax seals and machine signatures, condemning it not just to abandonment, but to enforced oblivion. Not even the Emperor's angels return from these places, and those who attempt it are erased, as though they never drew breath at all. Every official phrase, honed by the Munitorum over centuries, is a ritual in itself. For what other word can express the fate of a world that devours armies, drinks fleets, and leaves behind only silence and psychic residue? I was not born to this task, this chronicling of vanished stars and withered names. But mine is a hand that collates forbidden testimonies, opens redacted files, matches vox static epilogues to gravestone coordinates no chart now claims. Across vaults where the Inquisition's lantern light never fully reaches, I gather the fragments left from when the Imperium's reach found its limit, and then recoiled. The dead worlds, the places where it was decided, with all the cool resolution that only the truly fearful possess, that no more suns or steel or hope would be sent, where memory itself is judged a threat. Consider, then, what it takes to see an entire system condemned. For in the age of the Imperium, loss is never mere defeat. Defeat is routine, expendable, expected, and abided by administrative edicts as a necessary cost of war. But obliteration, the utter cessation of all contact, the infection of memory, the consuming terror of absence, this demands a reckoning beyond merely fallen soldiers. Only a handful of worlds in this wide galaxy earn that mark. Places where the most vaunted warriors, the Astartes, the God Emperor's own, met a fate so total, so incomprehensible, that return was neither possible nor permitted. Picture the long, dolorous process. An emerging threat, perhaps a seething psychic anomaly, perhaps a planetary uprising, perhaps readings so aberrant and urgent the Segmentum fleet is roused in full. Initial investigations, frequently led by guard regiments in the thousands, calculated into casualty rates before they ever land. The losses mount. Next come the Space Marines, those rare and precious assets, their arrival noted in transmission logs with a reverent kind of dread. Mission parameters: cleanse, control, recover, report. Yet, as weeks turn to months, and months become years, the messages change. Less regular, more tense, brevity giving way to static, then cut out entirely. And then, not even the Space Marines return. Retrieval teams vanish. Astropathic cries echo and die. Sometimes all that returns is the fevered gibbering of the warp-damned or a fragment of ceramite armor scoured, so smooth it could have been weathered for centuries. The dead worlds are not marked only by their emptiness. They are marked by what they refuse to give back. Let me recount these forbidden dossiers, one by one. Some you will recognize from scraps whispered among inquisitorial acolytes, or in the records of vanished chapters. Others are names scrubbed from the lexicon, lost save for the fingerprints they left on history's throat. There is the planet of Scylla Quintus, once a recruiting world for the Black Consuls. It orbited a hungry red star in the Diliad system, a fortress world with bastions sunk, so deep they reached warmthless caverns, half melted by ancient engines. When the cult uprising broke out, and it was more than a mere uprising, though the records are smudged and acid-burned, Segmentum Command dispatched not only the consuls, but significant detachments of Death Watch kill teams to reinforce the response. 8 companies made planetfall. Not a single Vox affirmation was ever received from the surface again. The last picked, recovered by a passing Mechanicus survey drone, showed a sky bubbling with iridescent filaments, as if the air itself had become thin-skinned and poisonously alive. Some say it was an artifact unearthed in the catacombs, a Xenos device that twisted matter and soul alike. Others, a full warp incursion anchored to the planetary core. The recovery mission, led by a detachment of Grey Knights, resulted in a psychic scream so loud that astropaths 3 systems away clawed out their own eyes. The Inquisition convened in secret, their conclave ending with the planet's full exterminatus order, followed by a navigational quarantine. Entire months of travel scripts were written to steer passing craft clear of its gravity well. Yet, centuries later, the data shadows linger. Planetary auspex readings periodically spike with impossible energy signatures, as if the dead planet is still devouring attempts to chart it. All attempts to reclaim Scylla Quintus are suppressed, its coordinates known to only the highest echelons of Ordo Malleus. Or take the case of Corda Minor, an agrimoon once lauded in administrative scrolls for its endless wheat seas, a breadbasket so reliable it kept half of Forge World war ready. 10 years after the Tyranid Hive Fleet Nadir vanished from the sector, scouts sent to recolonize Corda Minor found that not one fiber of organic matter remained on its surface. No bone, no fungus, not even bacterial trace. Guard teams sent to investigate landed for a single night before their signals were lost. Months later, the Navy blockaded the body. The only evidence of their landing was a half-digested lander door, found fused into a glassy pit and covered in runes written by a hand no longer human. What happened there? The prevailing theory is that Nadir in retreat seeded bioengines, microscopic, virulent, programmed to reduce all life to base elements to deny subsequent occupation. More radical savants suggest something far older, a phenomenon whereby the warp, starved of sentient presence, laces a planet with predatory psychic echoes. Ghosts grown so hungry they consume even microbial life. In either tale, Corda Minor is sealed to this day. Naval maps circle its orbit in black, and its name is a warning. Sometimes the harvest is not worth the sowing. The next is a world whose true name is lost, now referenced only as Ordophile, Upsilon Black. Once a forged citadel girding the border of the Halo stars, it ended in a string of desperate astropathic missives. We cannot kill it. We cannot even see it. It walks in the light we cast. The Magi's accounts grow incoherent. A full chapter, the Ivory Drakes, deployed 7 companies for recovery. No transmission ever again originated from a forge. Only scraps floated free, crystalline bones, scrap machines still locked in combat postures, stilled forever mid-battle. Months later, Severus Prime Sector received a craft bearing nothing but a palimpsest etched inside its hull. We are not ourselves. Do not approach. Close the record. What could overwhelm an entire chapter and a Mechanicus enclave in perfect synchronicity? The Conservator's suspicion. A Necron reclamation engine reactivating beneath the world's foundations, rewriting living and machine alike into new forms. No record shows what became of those who were taken. The Inquisition's decision was swift and chilling. Not eradication, but oblivion. Maps expunged, surveyor code wiped, new star charts altered to describe navigational hazards, and nothing more. When a world ceases to appear even as a warning, one should wonder what it is the librarians and the lords of Terra fear will be heard by the wrong ears. A different flavor of horror marks the fate of Perdidus Maleficarum, a shrine world whose saintly relics were famed across Segmentum Obscurus. It is said the very ground beneath its sanctuaries hummed with the Emperor's benediction. Pilgrims flocked in annual millions. The last recorded event was a surge of anomalous weather, blood rain, and blighted winds, followed by a psychic pulse that collapsed the planet's chief spire. A rapid deployment of Black Templars, accompanied by a full Ordo Hereticus conclave, was dispatched. What little came back was retrieved from a drifting drop pod, its walls scored by claw marks from the inside and filled with pale waxen statues of the dead. The pod was jettisoned into the sun within a day. There are theories. Some say a demon prince, once bound to the shrine's foundation, shucked off mortal chains and erupted, its hate washing clean the feeble blessings of the Imperium. Others suggest a darker possibility, that faith itself, hyped to a fever pitch, fractured the immaterial, and left the world open to predation. In the wake, the Inquisition laid anathema charges across the planet. Pilgrimages are punishable by death. All records erased save a single, blacklisted reference in ecclesiarchal hymnals. And they that trespass upon hallowed Perdidus Maleficarum shall find only silence and the echo of wings. But these are singular instances. What does it mean, truly mean, when even space marines, paragons of the Emperor's design, vanish so utterly that their closest kin dare not seek them? There are, in the less circulated tomes, and among the more haunted of the Ordo Malleuscribes, 3 grand theories, each more disturbing than the last. The first, the devouring wake. A world becomes not merely a place, but an anchor for the immaterial. When a demonic incursion is not repelled, but instead rooted to the planetary core, space, and time buckle. Souls, even the warp-hardened minds of Astartes, are devoured, not killed, not enslaved, but consumed in a way that leaves nothing but psychic residue. The accounts of scorched earth, of sudden vanishing, of fleets that report not even debris, align with this. Why no return? Because there is simply nothing left that can return. The signature is so total the evidence is an absence itself. Some say the Grey Knights, whose task is annihilation of such blasphemies, will sometimes wall off a planet, setting wards so that even they will never return, hoping the galaxy will forget the wound and leave the malignancy to starve. But the cost is vast, not only in the blood of heroes, but in the fact that, for all our certainty, there are things that can outlast even the Emperor's will. The second, the reclamation engine. Across the dark, choked void lie the workings of Xenos so ancient and so malicious that to merely disturb their machinery is to invite annihilation. Imagine, if you can, a mechanism buried for eons beneath a world, a device not designed for war, but for reasserting reality itself in the image of its creators. When humans, through unwise excavation or accidental contact, awaken such a device, it does not wage war. Instead, it translates living matter, space marine, guardsman, or civilian, into something else. Not death, not corruption, a complete, irreversible transformation. The survivors are not returned because they are not survivors at all. Each is subsumed or altered so thoroughly that there is no past self left to reclaim. Few in the Ordo Xenos dare investigate, save Death Watch units sworn to silence. Even they return, if at all, as beings remade, data ghosts, hollowed voices, tactical knowledge burned onto nothing more than lattice bones. The third, perhaps the most damning, the Imperial choice. There are times when the calculus of survival, the preservation of faith, morale, or simple strategic stability, demands not rescue but annihilation, of memory as surely as of flesh. When a world's loss threatens panic, heresy, or the spread of unspeakable knowledge, the Lords of Terra and their shadowy peers choose the coldest remedy. Records are erased, returning ships are scuttled, survivors quietly executed or relocated under new names. An entire narrative is manufactured. The world never existed as it was. The Imperium survives by forgetting, even as it drafts edicts to remember each and every sanctioned victory. Some say this is the most dangerous fate, for if Imperium's strength is faith, what then is left when faith is denied by the act of forgetting? The consequences ripple outward, subtle in their horror. Among the Astartes, ritual remembrance is sacred. The names of the fallen inscribed on banners, the tale of every lost brother recited at arming rituals and memorials. And yet, even among their chapters, are black lacunae, lists of names sealed away, mentions forbidden, entire companies remembered only in the absence their banners leave at feast. Some Astartes carry battered helms from these lost brothers, painting them black and adding no icon. Others, more mournful, mark their armor with coded inscriptions, praying that the Emperor's vision, if none others, can still recall those who vanish in erasure. And still, the common soldier bears the superstition. Forge workers whisper tales of dead stars. Fleet officers hang sigils of warding above their bunks, bearing names nobody says but all recognize. Entire sectors are thought-cursed, all navigation avoidant. Rumors hinting at the blacklists, those worlds only redacted astropads remember, if they remember at all. The Inquisition, for its part, guards these secrets jealously. Ordo Malleus and Ordo Xenos alike keep backup dossiers, dubiously complete, always under lock, often bait for heretics and traitors. Only the most trusted Death Watch veterans or Grey Knight Justicars ever see the full record, and even then, some gleanings can only be read by torchlight at Titan or in the shadow halls beneath Ordos Minores. How do commanders, those who must learn from horror to survive, write these losses into doctrine? With caution and subterfuge. New recruits are told stories in the negative. There are places you will never go. There are lives we do not count. Simulation exams expunge mention of certain coordinates. War games feature ghost zones any wise officer avoids. And off the record, training manuals in the Segmentum Command schools feature footnotes that say only, this scenario may recur. The wise do not seek to retrieve what is irretrievable. It is a culture of managed memory and a persistent, gnawing dread that the universe is far more dangerous, its enemies far more subtle, than any victory parade will ever confess. Beneath the grand cathedral of remembering, there is a crypt of forgetting, and every time a world is declared dead, the walls grow thicker, the inscribed names more numerous, and the silence deeper. But to erase is not always to protect. The loss is not only of heroes, but of meaning. Families in the hives of Terra swallow the grief of sons and daughters named only as lost in service. Pilgrims, once bound for shrines now blotted from the galaxy, kneel before empty altars and light candles to unknown saints. And for every inquisitorial conclave that congratulates itself on a wound contained or a secret safely buried, somewhere in the warp, something laughs. For forgetting is abandonment, and the warp devours what is abandoned. There is a next and final vignette, recent, and as yet unresolved. A world cataloged under the Inquisition's deepest codes, Project Memento Vitam. Once a thriving civilization, its downfall was rapid, chaotic, signaled by sudden tides of psychic static radiating from the planetary core. The Navy sent a Barkov-class recon fleet. Only 2 ships emerged. Their holds contained data logs depicting crumbling reality, shadows moving against probability curves, and the sound, above all, the sound of endless footsteps echoing in endless corridors. The Ordo Malleus sanctioned its finest strike force. Grey Knights, shielded in triple-layered wards, bearing relics never before tested in battle. The transmission lasted for days, an unbroken recitation of ritual cleansing, and, at the end, something that was not words, but the slow, deliberate abnegation of self. The last phrase, spoken by a voice curiously devoid of intonation, was, "No further retrieval. Seal what we have become." The planet remains quarantined. Passing ships report nothing, or at most a fleeting sense of intense unease, as if memory itself is afraid to linger. And still, somewhere within the fortress monasteries and data vaults, the debate endures. Is the world now truly dead, or has it simply entered a new, unrecorded state, a consciousness without history, a planet-shaped answer to a question no longer being asked? For all our efforts, for all the courage of the Emperor's angels, the wisdom of the Ordo, the resolve of countless generations, there are places where silence rules, where memory is both weapon and casualty, and where the cost of knowing is too high even for those bred for sacrifice. These are the dead worlds, graves for chapters, for dreams, for the certainty that the galaxy, even in its agony, can be known. But what do you think? Which is the true fate of the dead worlds, the gods of the warp, the engines of the Xenos, or our own cold choice to forget? Leave your theories below. And remember, the light of Imperium always casts a shadow.